So this comes down to also, again, it's societal constraints, things that we've been conditioned into, but masculinity, femininity, this probably more so applies to men being more free with their bodies, but it can still apply with women per se. So how do you feel that's an important thing, barrier to overcome, is an identification with masculinity or femininity, whichever you are, bodily, sex-wise?
Right. Right. That's a funny thing. What I do in some of the seminars that I do, I teach a little series of movement called movement snacks, and one of the exercises in there is to pretend that you're really good with a hula hoop, which a lot of people haven't done hula hoop for forever. And I said, well, you don't even need the actual hoop; just pretend that you're really good at it.
Right.
And stand there and wiggle your hips. And some people take to it right away, and other people are just incredibly inhibited. And so I explained to them, I said, look, hip control, this is not just a matter of sort of hippie athletics or dance. This is also a foundational movement. Your ability to control your hips in space, this is foundational for being a good athlete and for rehabilitating yourself against injury. So there's lots of good technical reasons to be good with your hips as well. And so, you give enough reasons, and the people say, oh, okay, I can move my hips in public now, and it's not a problem. And sure, yeah, I can do this hula hoop thing, and both men and women can benefit from that. So.
And then it comes down eventually, even if you have to approach it from an analytical mindset, when you get them into it, eventually they'll start seeing the right brain side of things will start to come over them naturally. Do you find that to be true?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And part of it is just experience too. I mean, my experience has been a typical example for me is when I go on a out-of-town trip and I have to go to the airport. Well, I know I'm going to be sitting on the airplane for hours, so I do some movement in the departure lounge before I get on the airplane. And when I first started this habit, I was a little bit worried about the eyeball weight, of people looking at me. And then after a while, I started to discover that people don't really pay any attention. I'm in the departure lounge, and I'm over in the corner, and I'm doing some squats and some lunges and some, hip rotations and that sort of thing. And people don't pay any attention.
Right.
I mean, they're watching CNN on TV, and that's fine. And I do my movement, I get on the plane, and then I feel great. So it's really not a problem.
Right. Awesome. So, in your book, Exuberant Animal, one of the chapters that I guess you could say spoke to me the most was your discussion on numbers and how everything is based on numbers in fitness, but the need to move beyond the numbers, and instead of just seeking numbers, seeking just to move. How do you develop that mindset?
Well, I think it helps really, again, to look at human history and the depth of our history. We, as human primates, it depends how you want to adjust the dates here, but I talk about the human lineage as being 6 million years. And during that time, as bipedal primates in East Africa, we were fit animals, and we were hunter-gatherers, living life entirely without the benefit of civilization, without the benefit of words and numbers, and doing quite well, thank you very much. I mean, we have been healthy throughout most of our history, with the exception of predator attacks and infectious disease. And things like words and numbers are a pretty recent invention. So you really can't say that numbers are necessary for human health, because they aren't. I mean, 4,000 species of mammals on the earth today, and we're the only one that feels it's necessary to use numbers to get fit. So now here we are, in the modern world. A lot of people say, well, we have to have numbers. But for me, the number one thing in physical fitness is learning to experience and feel your own body.
Absolutely.
You have
Yes.
this sensory feedback system in your body where you have gobs and gobs of information coming from your muscles, your joints, your tendons, your ligaments, all this proprioceptive information coming into your central nervous system. You want to learn how to feel that, and numbers don't really help that. You also have this interoception, which is your ability to feel chemical concentrations in your organs, in your abdomen, and all that gigabytes of information coming into your central nervous system all the time. And that's the primary task, is to feel that. Later on, if you really want to hone your performance and become a professional athlete, then it makes sense to start using numbers.
Right.
But for most people, most of the time, it's the experience that counts. And I always crack up because when I'm driving down the street or walking down the street and you see runners come by and they're checking their watch, like at every corner, and they have to see, oh, how am I doing? What's my time? What's my time? So, well, your body is going to tell you how you're doing.
Right.
Your body will tell you whether you're having a good experience or not, and your body knows whether you're running fast or slow, and your body knows whether you're challenging yourself or not. You do fine without the watch. So I think the numbers for most people are just a big stretch.
And it can be profound when you start to understand how to listen to your body. Just the feeling is, it's kind of undescribable in a sense. In my own training, perhaps, like I'll be doing deadlifts, and instead of geeking myself up, getting all geared up about, oh, how much can I put on the bar, I'll do a set of deadlifts, and I might sit still in a meditative posture for a minute or two and just feel whatever I feel going through my body from that work, and I feel how my heart rate, and I feel the perspiration, and I feel the muscle fatigue and all that, and I really pay attention to that, and the training session is just so much more gratifying than simply chasing numbers.
Right, and that also ties into this whole world now of mindfulness meditation, because you've got this entire community and this entire discipline of mindfulness now, which I think really can and should overlap with physical training. It's like paying attention to our experience. The better we get at that, the more complete our development's going to be.
Awesome. So when it comes down to numbers, it's pretty easy to get trapped in short-term mindset, short-term goals, instead of viewing your training as a long-term perspective. And then when you deal with short-term, you're going to deal with things that come up, injuries, disabilities, all these type of things that can happen when you put the cart before the horse, if you will. So how, in your view, is a long-term mindset much more important than a short-term mindset, and how do we go about getting into that process more?
Well, the long-term thing for me is really interesting, because what I do, I often refer back to this one principle I learned about physical training. It's called the SAID principle, SAID. And a lot of people in the industry haven't heard of this, but I think it's fundamental. SAID stands for specific applications to impose demands. In other words, the body makes highly specific changes according to how we challenge it. And it depends on it depends on what kind of functional outcome you're trying to train for. And this is, when I train people, I ask them straight out. I actually make them write it down. I say, what do you want to be doing with your body in 20 or 30 or 40 years? What do you want to be doing with your body when you're 60 or 70 or 80 years old? And that, whatever answer you give there, that's going to help you define what your training program should be. So if you want to be hiking in the mountains when you're 70 years old, well, start having some adaptations for that early on, and that'll help you define your training program. So your body is plastic, and your body will adapt to however you load it, and it'll adapt in very precise ways. So that the life that you want to create for yourself, that defines your training program.
That is awesome. I'm going to have to listen back to that a couple times, just let it sink deeper and deeper.